Sarah, tell folks who you are.
Yeah, so I'm Sarah Falcon. I'm the head of Falcon Consulting. We're a marketing consultant revenue operations company and fractional CMO.
Okay, thank you. I knew who you are, but everyone doesn't. So, we have an alternate set of questions that I like to use sometimes, and where you and I are going to do the alternate set of questions, which means I want to start off kind of like at a high level. You're talking to a lot of clients, you're working with clients, you've been doing this for a while, right? The economy is kind of weird, crazy up and down, especially over the last 3 or 4 years, right? What are like the biggest shifts or changes you're seeing in marketing strategies or marketing priorities as we sort of move into 2025?
Yeah, I mean, right now in particular feels a little weird because, the macroeconomics and the political system makes people a little bit nervous to make bigger commitments. That said, for SMBs that I work with, their business is doing pretty well and picking up, and there is more cash and more liquidity and more of
Right.
sort of a re-engagement and a reinvestment in growth. So there feels like an interesting pickup more than in the last 2 years of um, like optimism and actual business growth happening in the SMB side. I know it's different on manufacturing and distribution. GovCon, like those things get very hairy and very complicated. But
Right.
private sector and SMBs, I'm seeing um, small businesses who've had sort of incremental growth that have bootstrapped it are getting more and more traction and looking for the next step.
I think manufacturing might be an interesting place to look at like 2 years out from now. I saw this report a couple weeks ago that said that the US is undergoing a reindustrialization that dwarfs what it went through when it first industrialized.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah. I mean,
As everything's brought back on shore, I guess.
the promise slash threat slash gamble of China, it just seems to be completely different than the
Yeah.
math we thought it was in the 90s and the aughts. Like it's just a different global player
Right.
than
So,
what it was.
based on what you've seen, then, like, how are companies kind of changing their tactics, to sort of line up with those budgets? Are they doing anything different? Are they pulling back from certain things in general that you see, or exploring different things?
Yeah, I'm seeing exploring new markets, new channels, thinking more about partners and partnership marketing,
Mm,
thinking more about sort of professionalizing their marketing. So, as a fractional CMO, I often come in where there is maybe some marketing team in place or their head of marketing has left. And they're kind of trying to figure out, like, strategically, how do we leverage marketing to grow the business rather than marketing as like a group of people who execute marketing tasks.
yeah.
So it's thinking more about like marketing as a part of the evolution and strategic growth of the company rather than like a arts and crafts cost.
You gave me a great idea there, and I'm just recording.
Mhm.
Just why not?
Great.
Thank you for that. I always love new ideas. Sorry, my Mac had a small stroke there, but it's back now.
Oh,
All right. Uh, hey, so has the let's switch over to being like a fractional CMO for a second, right? Has the process of finding clients like changed in the last year or two, or do you think it's going to change soon? Like, for fractional CMOs or even marketing consultants?
yeah. I mean, I I think it's going to keep changing, and there's so much more awareness of fractional as a concept
Right.
and expectations, sort of mutual expectations of what a fractional CMO is going to do, both on the buyer side and on the fractional CMO side. That it is, similarly, it is getting a little bit more professionalized. Like it's getting there's more sort of resourcing and understanding of what the difference is between like a marketing consultant or an interim director or a fractional CMO. And as those things get more clarified, I think it helps both sides sort of understand the expectations and the role of a fractional CMO and the benefit or disadvantages. It's very competitive. There are more and more
Right.
fractional CMOs every day, and that's the genius of what you're doing is because like we love talking about ourselves, and there are more and more of us. So
Marketers like talking
I
about
know,
themselves?
I know,
Really?
I know.
Someone
You,
asked
you
me
know why?
pretty recently, right? They said, "Was it hard to find guests?" And I said, "I think
Exactly.
it would be harder to find marketers who it would be harder to keep them away from a microphone than to get them in front of a microphone. You
Yeah.
have to like beat them off with a baseball bat to not get in front of a microphone. Fair enough, right? Good for me. Um, so let's talk about that from the other side for a second, because you talked about it's competitive, right? And you're not wrong. A year ago, I did a search on LinkedIn for the phrase fractional CMO, just like the phrase in quotes, right? Worldwide. And there were like 3,500 results. And if you did that today, you'd come up with something like 8,000 results
Yeah.
in just a year.
Yeah.
So, from the company side, what are some of the challenges for finding a fractional CMO? And then, if you've got like time, or have an opinion on it, from the company side, what are the challenges for finding marketing staffers right now?
Yeah.
Well, let's start with finding a CMO.
The the first is understanding organizationally if what you need is a CMO or something
Mm-hmm.
else. Because a
Right.
CMO is a very specific title, and it also requires sort of an agreement between the C-suite of what the CMO's role is going to be. Because sometimes you think you want a CMO, but you just want a VP of marketing or a head of
Yeah.
marketing or someone to like run marketing. You don't want a person who's going to be in the conversation setting market strategy,
Yeah.
setting pricing. You right like so organizationally, you need to be really clear if the CMO is really what you're up for, and what you want to pay for, and what you want to listen to and sort of deal with, or if what you want is someone to grow your business via marketing by executing marketing tasks. And there's nothing wrong with either of those choices. I think it's just a clarity on the side of the client of understanding what marketing can do for the business.
Are
And
there any tips you would give if someone said, "Hey, we're not in the verticals that you tend to specialize in, Sarah, but hopefully you can give us some tips and tricks, like how should we find a fractional? We know we need a fractional CMO. How should we find one, or what should we keep an eye on? What are the red flags or green flags?"
mm-hmm. um, a a curiosity and understanding of the vertical you're in, a curiosity and about the people on the C-suite team and their expertise and perspective, and uh, a track record of doing a similar role in
Right.
a similar company. Either, especially size wise, I find that it's a really different game if it's enterprise versus a small business.
Let's go back to the previous question. We talked before about, and thanks for the answer, about finding a fractional CMO, like sort of sourcing one in the first one.
Mhm.
It's kind of crazy if you like post a position for, let's say, like a junior or little mid-level marketing staffer right now, right? It's
Mhm.
not unusual for a company to get thousands
Yeah,
of people applying in just 24 hours,
yeah.
right? Do you think it's going to get easier or harder to find marketing personnel in 2025?
I mean, so AI has like created a problem
Yeah, kind
for
of an
all
arms
of
race.
us, which is that it makes it makes it seem like applying and writing cover letters and cleaning up your resume is
Hmm.
fast and easy and scalable. And you may get thousands of
Hmm.
applicants, but if you read through them, you should be able to quickly see which have actual meat and which don't. So, like, I don't have like a other than so yeah, I blame I for so many things in marketing, creating like a bunch of noise that is more garbage for us to sift through than and makes it harder to find the quality candidate. So, I think I think hopefully shortly there are tools that help businesses sift through that applicant pool so that you can quickly, you know, I always look for like adverbs. Like nobody writes adverbs, but like ChatGPT loves an adverb. And some
Yeah.
of like the keywords that
Yeah.
ChatGPT uses, and you know, as a writer, right? Like
Oh my God. Yes.
bad writing is bad writing. And just personally, as a marketer and someone who does a lot of copywriting and copy editing, like the poor writing is the easiest way to kick someone out of an applicant pool, for better or for worse.
Did you ever see the TikTok video where someone is telling ChatGPT? I think this was back in 3.5 or 4, not 4.0 maybe,
Mhm.
but kept telling ChatGPT to write like a cold sales email or, to a prospect,
Yeah.
and it would start with "Hope this finds you well." And so they came back and said, "Okay, like that's not bad. Fix this, but don't say hope this finds you well." And it writes it, "I hope this finds you well." And this is like, nope, you're saying it again. Don't say so. It just finds variations of ways to say, "Hope this finds you well" as the
Yeah.
very first. It can't push them off it. And it's like, I don't know what's happening here, but I'm just going to delete that one manually and let it go.
Right. Who's the boss? So yeah, so I think we're just right now in a particular time where there's just like
Yeah,
the quantity is just a real problem, and it makes it harder to see quality. But I don't think it means that quality isn't there. It's just noisier.
yeah. Okay, so let's talk about, and we don't want to name any particular companies, but you're talking to a lot of companies. You're immersed in marketing world like I am, right? What do you think are some common mistakes companies are making right now that are either short sighted or just like things that they're still doing things that they've been doing too long?
Yeah, yeah. Uh, a couple things. I mean, I call it random acts of marketing, which is just trying a bunch of trying a bunch of things without the tracking or metrics to know what's
Right.
working. Sort of not being serious about it. Um, and and others is like you found TikTok is a huge
Yeah.
driver of views, which if you asked me for a marketing strategy, I would say like YouTube Shorts and optimizing, and I think um, you know having the curiosity and the resourcing to strategically pursue one new channel at a time and sort of watch and see what happens, and to be able to do that
Yeah.
deliberately and carefully and then pivot from there. So those sound a little contradictory, but I do see, we need Pinterest, TikTok, YouTube Shorts, Instagram, and this like there's such FOMO that like maybe we're gonna miss out on the channel that's gonna, like from the aughts, like make us go viral. But but in spreading yourself too thin, you're not optimizing against a specific channel and seeing what can actually work if you start really thinking about the consumer on that platform and creating content that resonates with them.
Yeah, I'm looking at that now. TikTok was added for the podcast, and the podcast is virtually like 99+% all clips as far as its
Mhm.
view count goes. Oh, and I thought YouTube Shorts would be like the main outlet, and it barely breaks double digits for the overall percentage of views.
Yeah.
And TikTok was added as an afterthought because it would cost literally nothing other than a few minutes to create an account.
Hmm.
Right? And then it turns out, and you can make lots of bets if it takes literally no effort and no cost,
Yeah.
right? And then go from there. And then you might get surprised that like a channel opens up. But now I'm reaching the point where I mean the podcast is like we exceeded 100,000 views for a podcast that didn't start publishing on TikTok until February, right?
Hmm.
And right now this is being recorded in September. Then it turns out to be like the biggest channel, but none of it is optimized for TikTok, right? None of it is in the
Yeah.
TikTok sort of style, or like haven't really put in that. So now I'm looking at that and say, if I'm going to keep going on this, I may need to really, now that I know it's my main source of traffic, I probably have to like organize around it, pay more attention to like likes and views and metrics, and so like basically I just threw a bunch of seeds and something started to grow, and
Yeah.
that's the one that's going to get water. But yeah, I have yet to pay any attention to it. TikTok other than keep publishing like automated clips to it.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Yeah, the dream.
You don't know. Speaking
Yeah.
of which, right? So in marketing, either as ideas or strategies or concepts or platforms, you can talk about whatever and everything you want. What do you think is underrated or overlooked right now by clients?
Um,
You could say focus is underrated. It sounds like,
yeah.
it's kind of underrated.
I think authenticity is so powerful, and
Right.
and again, I think when I started doing marketing 20 years ago, to send out an email was like so hard. You had to code it, you had to check it in Hotmail, you had to check it
Yeah.
in AOL, you hosted the images on something else. Like if you went to a conference and you took a picture on a conference on your digital phone, you had to have a card reader, then you had to like plug it in. Like sending out an email was much, so much work.
Yeah.
Um, to create like a single piece of content. Um, and it's so much faster now and it's so much smoother now. And like we were saying, like with AI tools, you can you can create at scale a ton of content, right? I've used AI tools to generate um, ads, right? And you put in the image that you want, you put in the text you want, you put in the tone that you want, and then you get like 500 ads that look like they were generated by AI, right?
Yeah.
Like it was like great, but the data on the brands that I've worked with is what cuts through the noise, is something that is authentically representative of the people in the company, or the values they hold, or the quality of the products, or what customers actually feel about the products. That is real, clearly and interestingly communicated, and like delivered in the way that people resonate with. So maybe it's email, although that's very hard, or it's SMS, or it's a social media post. But I think that authenticity, it feels so cumbersome now because it's so much faster to do things with AI, and
Yeah.
like just plug things in, and also the demands on marketing are very, very high. But I think there's a real opportunity to slow down and figure out like the authentic voice and have it cut through.
Let's talk to CEOs for a second and stick with
Mhm.
authenticity. Okay.
Mhm.
There's been uh, looking at some stats on LinkedIn. It seems like more and more CEOs are posting, like companies, instead of posting on their company pages on LinkedIn, they're
Yeah.
having the CEO post
Yeah.
content and ideas on the CEO's personal account.
Mhm.
Right. So basically, CEO, I mean, technically, CEOs have always been like the front person or spokesperson for the company. Right. But now they're more and more so, or seem to be more and more so, wrapped up in the brand of the company.
Mhm. Yeah.
You think that's a good idea? Like, you think that's going to like survive the 5-year test?
That's an interesting question.
CEOs change companies. What do you do when you change companies?
Yeah, it's it depends what you're selling.
Yeah.
Like, and it depends like who, if the marketing team is creating the content, if it's actually authentically from the
Right.
CEO. Um, I think I guess the short answer is like it depends on the content strategy around it and what it is that you're trying to communicate. Right. You also see more and more like people using LinkedIn to post like very personal stories, or like my
Right.
son's
Yeah.
graduation, or
The
I went to the
Facebookization of LinkedIn. Yeah.
yeah, and that feels
Off.
you know it feels often also like I don't think it'll last the
Yeah.
5 years, but I do. I just, it really depends on the brand. I work um, I work with some businesses that are very um, they're services businesses. They're very personality driven. The expertise of the individual and the care they show to their customers is really core to who they are, and communicating it is great. For product companies, it's a little bit more of a stretch because it's sometimes hard to connect,
Right.
you know, the sort of lifestyle brand of the founder with the lifestyle of the product company. I think it just depends on the on actually articulating what the strategy is and figuring out how to do it. Um, but I think authentic conversations and video and is does I mean it cuts through the noise as long as you know what it is you're trying to say and why you're saying it.
Yeah.
But it's also it's for CEOs, like, if in my experience, um, some of them really have it, some of them really don't. Is like the patience to see if the content's going to hit. They're
Right.
like, well, I did the video. Why isn't it getting more views? Right? Their time is
Yeah.
very valuable and very precious, and also it's hard to be like, it's kind of a numbers game, and it's kind of a chance game, and it's kind of a waiting game. So, see.
Yeah. We'll see, I guess. Um, okay. So I want you to imagine this scenario. You're a longtime friend, right? You're about the same age. You're about the same like point in your careers or businesses, right? She comes to you and she says, "Hey, Sarah. So I know that there's a lot of people in marketing looking for work, but my kid just graduated with a degree in marketing
Mhm.
and is trying to figure out what are like the growth areas within marketing generally, or what are the growth sort of industries to try to get into,
Mhm.
and like what advice would you be able to give that person?
Yeah. Um, to
Like TV advertising might not be your future.
Yeah, yeah, maybe not
Print
TV.
advertising, maybe not so much, or radio advertising, maybe not so much,
Right.
right?
Um, I would I would really look at growth marketing and product marketing, because
Yeah.
those, I think, are very rigorous and very results driven, and is a good mix of creativity and data and tying marketing to revenue, which is really important for a career in marketing.
Yeah. And what about industries? You think there's anything that's like going to get like hot in the next couple or 3 years? Anything that's going to cool off? Or
That's a great question.
I wouldn't go into the making face masks industry anymore. I think that's sort of run its course with COVID.
Yeah, yeah.
I
You
mean,
know,
here's an example, okay?
yeah.
Let's just break it down into the two largest sections. Someone says, "Hey, I don't really have a preference or like have anything invested yet in either one of these, but starting out in my career, do you think I should focus on B2C marketing or B2B marketing?"
Yeah, it's a good question. So I think there are a couple things. I think knowing if you want to work in a big organization or a small organization is
Right.
important, because that'll really shape the big organizations have a lot of benefits and they can get a lot of exposure and upward mobility, but your job may be very siloed for a
Yeah.
long time. Um, Small companies, you may get to touch more things and learn more things, but there may not be as much room for growth, and
Right.
jumping from small to big is hard. So I think, like, understanding, but you may have more independence, more creativity. So understanding like which sort of you slot into from based on your personality, if it's a small or big business. Um, Now I'm forgetting your question.
It's
Oh,
B2C or B2B?
B2B or B2C. Um, so I started in B2C. I was in B2C for 10 years, and then I switched over to B2B. Now I
Mm-hmm.
do a combo of both. Um, I loved B2C because marketing directly impacts revenue. In B2B, you are dependent on a sales team in
Mm-hmm.
order for marketing to turn into revenue. And when it works well, it's great because the revenue can be very large. And also, you don't have to do all the work to get the revenue,
Right.
which is also nice. Um, but it's a big dependency on marketing, has a huge dependency on sales in order to prove value in
Mm-hmm.
B2B. So you just have to kind of know that going into it and look for organizations that have um, either structurally a CRO who sits over sales and marketing so that you know that marketing is tied into revenue, or that you have a or they have a very high functioning sales team that works well with marketing, which is a little bit harder to suss out.
I'm not familiar with that. The question. I have no idea what the answer actually is, and I have no idea what your answer is going to be. Do you think it's more common to have a chief revenue officer in a B2B environment or a B2C environment?
I've seen it more in B2B, but I don't know the
No,
answer. I don't know the answer.
I don't know.
I
I
mean,
mean, I talk to a lot of CROs. They all seem to be in B2B, but that doesn't mean anything because, I
yeah,
mean, I could just be talking to like a small set.
yeah, I don't know. And again, like I said, my first 10 years was primarily B2C, and the second 10 years was primarily B2B. And that's when the CRO title really started becoming more
Mhm.
relevant. So I don't know if it's just like what I'm looking at. And I don't know. Um, but, but yeah, but with B2C, it might be more, um, it might be more interesting, but consumer marketing is very hard. It's very, very noisy. It's very, very challenging. So,
In case anyone is wondering, B2B is also very, very hard, but just for different reasons.
yeah, exactly. I think B2C, the big challenge is it's very noisy and very hard to reach
Yeah.
consumers, and it's very expensive to reach consumers. And B2B, it's a long sales cycle. There's a lot of things that can go wrong
Yeah,
between
and you
marketing
don't
and
have as many tools. And by tools, I mean, for example, I got hired by someone last year. She was a fractional CMO, but she'd come from B2C,
Mhm.
and she hired me for a consulting gig, which I don't normally do. But she was in a bad spot. She had moved into the B2B world, and her client slash employers just were not happy overall with her. And she says, "I just don't get it." And I had to walk her through some things. I said, you know, all of the, of course, marketing system, all of the research, all of the sort of psychological understanding and tools and all that kind of stuff, were all done for B2C. And most
Oh,
of them,
sorry.
or many of them, you're not allowed to use them in B2B. I'll give you one example. I said, in B2B, you can virtually never use the concept of scarcity, right?
Mhm.
In B2C, you can say only 3 tickets left at this price, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Everyone who's ever bought an airline ticket has seen that. I said in B2B, companies don't buy from someone if they think they can't buy the exact same thing tomorrow or next year. For all you know, they're including it in a package or a product that they're making and passing
yeah,
it on. So you can't use scarcity. And taking scarcity away cuts out a big chunk of what B2C is about, right?
yeah,
There can't be exclusivity. Discounts don't really work, right? If you sell an enterprise software product and you say, if you close by the end of Q3, you'll get like 5% off, or 5% is like a lot
yeah,
of money,
yeah,
right? Now, I don't care. I know that if I take my time and I come back 6 months from now
yeah.
in next
Exactly.
year, you're going to give me the discount or your competitor will.
Yeah,
So, you don't have discounts, you don't have scarcity. It's like you take away most of the big tools. I summed it up for this way. I said, B2C, right? It's a whole big thing. Anything's theoretically possible, but on the other hand, expectations are X, right? In B2B, you're kind of expected to build a rocket in a garage with bicycle parts. They still
yeah,
want the rocket, but you don't have most of the tools that you would have had in a lab in a B2C thing.
yeah. And services and technology it's hard to sell. There was
Yeah.
a recent story about Klarna,
Mhm.
the like payment
Payment company.
uh, software company, and they had used Salesforce AI to build out a suite of AI enabled tools, and then they used their own AI tools to rebuild it. So then they kicked out Salesforce AI and they fired half of their team.
Yeah.
And so there is a problem is when if you're selling a technology tool that the person you're selling it to can build it themselves.
Yeah. There's actually I do like setups for companies, and I used to do a lot of. I used to create and script a lot of technical sales webinars for companies, and we would get to. It would be pretty structured, and you'd get to a point. I would tell them like this: you can consider this entire thing to be like a 7-act play, and the part that you think it's a 2-act play, where you introduce yourself and then you spend the entire rest of the time talking about your product. I said there's lead up and we got to frame them properly and we do need a call to action. But I said the main part that you're used to, which is like, how does this work? The geek out part. I said there's an overt message to this and there's a covert message to this. And it's very important that you keep both in mind. And the overt message, when you're explaining features and benefits and, how does it work in your workflow, I say, You need to be able to convey that you're being very transparent and open. You're showing them, like we start here and we do this, and then we have a function that does that. You have to do all that. And yet at the same time, you need to convey to them, we've done all the work and thinking on this, and it was complicated. So you shouldn't build this yourself. You should
Yeah,
just
yeah,
give us the money and shortcut yourself to a positive future.
yeah,
Right. And it's very clear. So if you forget to convey somehow, either with very complicated diagrams, I said this is the only part of a presentation where you should ever have a complicated diagram is the how does it work, section 5, we call it, right?
yeah,
You want to like instantly convey to them, like, we're showing you everything, but there's a lot to this.
yeah,
Right. And you can spend the next 3.5 years trying to build it yourself and reverse engineer it, or you can just give us some money and like, we'll have this like turned up in 3 months and you're out.
yeah.
Yeah. But you
I
have
mean,
to scare them a little bit.
that's the old like free assessment trick, which
Yeah.
is that you tell them all the things that are wrong and how hard it is to fix it, but that you can fix it for them
Yep.
easily. Um, I found in my own business, free assessment, free audit, that goes nowhere. The thing that's most impactful is um, like discovery conversations. Like I'm just like high trust, high patience,
Right.
high empathy, and it takes however long it takes. But I have the luxury of I'm the boss, so I get to.
Yeah.
I'm not saying what's going to close in Q4, and you're
Right.
not going to get your bonus if you don't. I mean, I won't, but it's all internal pressure.
Fair
But
Your meetings with HR are quite short.
exactly,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, but I do find that like a 30, 60, 90-day plan or just a paid discovery or paid strategy has been more impactful in terms of closing meaningful clients than
Right.
a free assessment or a free audit or a free.
Okay, this has been great. I love this, like the open-ended questions. I love it when people choose them instead of going through the core questions.
Mhm.
So thanks so much for agreeing to sight unseen, go into the deep end of the pool with me. I really appreciate it. So who should be contacting you these days, and how should they do it?
Yeah, so you should contact me if you feel like you're ready to grow the business, but you're not sure if marketing is helping you get there.
Mm-hmm.
And then we can just have a conversation to understand where you want to grow the business and how, and understand how to think about how marketing can help you get there. Because marketing can do a lot. Marketing, it's also helpful to know what marketing can't do. So those are the conversations I love having, which is my business is growing. I have ambitious plans and a
Right.
readiness, but I feel like that what I'm doing right now isn't working as well as it should, or I don't really know if it's working. And I want to understand how to do better, do more.
All right. And what? Go to your website.
Go to my website. This is my emails on the thing. You can look at me. I'm on LinkedIn. I was blessed with a name that not many people have. So
Yeah, that's
if it
pretty
looks
good,
like me
actually.
and it says Sarah Falcon, it's me.
All right. Thanks, Sarah. I really appreciate this. This has been great. And
Yeah.
thanks for watching, everybody. This was episode 124, although you're unlikely to see this little part because you're watching it on a clip on TikTok, most likely. So,
Awesome.
we meet the audience where they are. It's not up to me to tell them how they should watch it. All right. Thanks, Sarah.